Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, something a lot of econ finance bros believe is in a survivorship bias. When they're in university, they become obsessed with becoming the next Ray Dalio, Stanley Druckenmiller, or any other famous hedge fund manager, that they fail to see the bigger picture of how difficult and risky it is and how potentially this can stagnate or wreck their career in the name of survivorship bias. That is to say, for every Peter Lynch, for every Ray Dalio, we have hundreds, if not thousands, of people who faded into obscurity as average analysts or even were forced to exit the world of finance because they weren't able to make the cut in such a cutthroat industry. This particular debate is about risk management, and we think if you are so interested in this kind of career, the first thing you have to note is that it's quite competitive. In many instances, you can fail, and in order to be able to have a chance at better success in the future, you say no to this now and build your career in adjacent kinds of fields and potentially enter that at a later point. And take note, this is also a very toxic and very stressful career. A lot of assholes above, to your side, and below you. And in many instances, because of the long work hours, a lot of these young people get exposed to cocaine, alcoholism, prostitution, like all that Wall Street bullshit, primarily as a means of being able to cope with it. But it's not just hard in a vacuum like any job. This is uniquely difficult because your entire career is hinged on externalities outside your control that can literally wreck your career, even if you're motivated and even if you're good. Things like rising and escalating geopolitical tension, like what we're seeing with US and China, Russia and Ukraine, and most recently, the siege of Venezuela. And this all is exacerbated in the financial markets, where sure, you have boom and bust cycles of cyclicality, but the heart of hedge fund management is asset management. And all of these assets, even if you have non-correlated assets like gold and commodities, all of these things from stocks, bonds, real estate, derivatives, options, swaps, heck, even fucking cryptocurrency and NFTs, are all largely at the mercy of these externalities. And if the AI bubble is as overheated and it's potentially going to crash, a lot of these things are going to be against your favor. A few things on our side of the house. Number one, this is a debate about a strategic choice of a fresh grad student. We can assume you're probably from an above average or decent business school, but you yourself are probably in the top 5% to be able to have a chance to get this offer. An offer from Bridgewater Associates, an offer from Millennium or Citadel, and you're caught between your ambition as well as that part of your brain which got you into this desire, which is ultimately about weighing realism versus what you ultimately want, trying to understand the risk-reward metric of such. And we say that it's probably going to be contrarian to your true desire to really want to do that, precisely when things are stacked against you. Before I proceed, go, POI, go for it.
If it is true that there's so much externalities causing this kind of risk, why exactly would building a career in an adjacent field that would probably be also subject to these sort of risks from these externalities?
Because using your finance and economic skills as a stockbroker or as someone in financial controlling in other kinds of industries, like in banking, like in real estate, like in FMCGs, like Unilever, Procter & Gamble, and Nestle, as well as maybe in consulting, these things, no shit, of course, are affected by financial contagion, but the extent of such is not as performance-based. Take note, you're gonna sacrifice 5 to 6 years of your career to maybe have a 50% chance, if you're lucky, to get that position. And the harm if you fail is that you are branded as a second-rate analyst. Maybe you have a shot at applying next cycle, but they're probably gonna prioritize the younger next batch of graduates. But it takes even more time and effort to try and figure it out. Contrary to popular belief, sometimes we have to be realistic in our choices. And in as much as you are a probably naive and delusional individual who might be theoretically smart, you are the most subject to making that poor decision of wrecking your career and hinging it solely on that singular path. We think our comparative, when you reject the offer, is that you can use it as a bargaining chip. When you go to these other agencies and say, hey, I got offered this, I rejected it, I'm here to work with you. Whether you're going to work in tech, whether you're going to work in any other form of adjacent industry, which is still within the realm of business, your value is seen as above, and that gives you a license to be able to negotiate. Why is that comparative particularly safer? That's safer for 3 reasons. Number 1, it's not as performance-based, meaning you're like to get a fair compensation and bonuses as long as your company doesn't get wrecked. And I think working generally in terms of banking, or even in the largest Fortune 500 companies around the world, of course are subject to volatility, but not as directly correlated as literally dealing with those investment classes that have a huge direct correlation to what happens with the economy. Number 2, you're less subject to this tournament style system wherein they can hire more people and you can all advance together. Of course, being promoted in any kind of job is difficult, but it's not like a 50% chance of it happening. On average, these careers, whether it be 2 or 3 years, you can get promoted. So in the average of you taking that risk, maybe you can get promoted 1, 2, maybe 3 times in that career. That significantly places you better off. And here's the kicker. Even if you aren't able to 10x that in the start, we're here to focus on a safe trajectory upward versus the huge volatility that can happen on their side of the house because promotions on our side are quicker. Ladies and gentlemen, delusion is something very dangerous, and that can feed the survivorship bias that young people have. And as an average person, especially someone very ambitious, you have to delve in the idea of realism and ultimately delay the gratification as opposed to being delusional and trying to take on something with disproportionate risk outside your control. We are very proud to open this debate from side proposition.